Is there anything more relaxing than a train ride? Sitting back, relaxing, and enjoying the scenery as it goes rolling by. We have several different train excursions in the greater Western New York region, and this week we're going to be talking to one of those organizations that sponsors excursions on this week's episode of the State of Greater Western New York Report, which as always is brought to you by...
Each week, our community makes history. Each week, you make history. And each week, there's only one source to turn to for the first take on history. You know what that is? Subscribe to the Sentinel right now to discover the history being made in your own backyard. The Linden Honeoye Falls Lima Sentinel. More than just your news, it's your history. Welcome, everyone, to this edition of the State of Greater Western New York Report. Join us each episode as we discuss fantastic topics ranging from history to science to the strange and the wonderful, as well as the treasured spirit with which our region has infused America. We challenge you to consider all things Greater Western New York, from our region's very beginnings to how it inspires, how it empowers, and why it is so admired. Here's the host of the State of Greater Western New York Report, Chris Carosa.
Hi there, and welcome everyone to this version of the State of Greater Western New York Report. With us today is Otto Vondrak. He is the president of the Rochester and Genesee Valley Railroad Museum, and they're going to be doing some special things this year. We'll be talking about that in a moment. But first, let's talk to Otto himself. Otto, how do you end up becoming the president of a railroad museum?
Well, I've been volunteering with the organization off and on for the last 25 years. I started when I came up here as a student. I went to RIT for graphic design, and one of my professors let me know, hey, there's a train museum like just down the road from here. And me and my friends got involved while we were still in school, and we've just continued to stay involved. We love the history, we love preservation. And it's just, I can't think of a better opportunity to get involved with railroads.
Tell us a little bit about what you do outside of the railroad business, because that's kind of interesting and it is related.
Sure. Yeah, my regular job is I'm the editor of Railroad Model Craftsman magazine. It's a magazine for scale model railroaders. And I'm also managing editor of Rail Fan and Railroad magazine, which is a monthly magazine about real railroads and people who like to photograph them, ride them, and learn about their history. So it's fortunate I've been able to turn my hobby into my job, and it's a lot of fun.
And I read those magazines, and I had no idea the editor was located right here in Western New York. That is fantastic. Have you ever done a story on the museum or something related to the museum?
Actually, in Railfin and Railroad, we run an occasional column that's called Preservation Topics, where we invite other railroad museums and preservation groups to talk about the unique challenges that they face and also highlight some of their more interesting preservation projects. And so from time to time, I will write about the museum and my own experiences from behind the scenes as one of the officers working with volunteers to move our mission forward.
Now, tell us a little bit about the history of the museum. I know where it is. It's in Rush, New York,
Yep.
right off the old Erie line. Is that correct? Is it the old Erie line? Yeah.
Yeah, we in 1971, our group purchased the abandoned train station at Industry right there on Route 251 in Rush. Our organization, we were the Rochester chapter of the National Railway Historical Society, dating back to 1937. A bunch of railroad enthusiasts got together, and they sponsored trips and started preserving artifacts. And over the next 30 years, they amassed a really large collection of artifacts, and they had a big group of volunteers, and they're like, we should really just start our own railroad museum to house our growing collection. And they did a search, and the best location they found was this old abandoned train station in Rush, and it saw its last passenger train in 1941. The railroad didn't really have a need for it, so they sold it to us for $1. And probably the best bargain we ever had. And our volunteers restored the depot to the way it would have looked in the 1930s. And over the last 40, 50 years or so, not only did we restore the depot, but we also built our own 1 mile long demonstration railroad. So that means not only do we have historic trains that we've restored and we're showing off, but you actually climb on the exhibits and we give you a ride.
One of the things that's fascinating about this museum is you actually have a fairly, I'll say, large, I know it's not as big as mainline railroads, but you've got a pretty big yard. That wasn't there originally, right? You guys had to build that.
Yeah, no, we built everything. We built one display yard at the industry depot, and then there's a second yard that the train ride actually brings you to. It's another display yard, and it's right next to our restoration shop. So the volunteers built this whole railroad themselves. And, it's been there for so long. People ride the railroad and they think it was built to serve the state school or that's been there all along. But people are always amazed to learn that our volunteers built and maintain it all by ourselves.
How did they learn how to do these things? Were they originally railroaders, or is there a training school that they had to go to? This is fascinating. There's a lot of detail I don't think people understand that you don't teach this anymore. I don't
Yeah,
think.
right. No, part of it, we are New York State's largest operating railroad museum, and we didn't get that way overnight. It's been over the last 50 years that we've grown, and a lot of the people who are members, they just have an interest in railroads. But we also attract a lot of professional railroaders. Some are active, some are retired, and that's where we learn a lot of the skills of the trade, learning about track construction and maintenance from people who actually did it, learning how to operate trains safely from engineers and conductors who do the job every day. So, we're not out there winging it. We do have a lot of professional guidance that actually measures in our success.
And one of the things that fascinated me when I went to Steamtown's in Scranton, Pennsylvania, it's
Yeah.
a national park, believe it or not, an old railroad yard, Lackawanna, I think it was. One
Mhm.
of the things they said when they restore these cars, and maybe this is a national park requirement, but I don't know if you have the same thing, they have to use the original tools. Well, tools that are like the original tools. They can't use really any modern technology when they restore something. Do you have the same sort of philosophy when you go about your restorations?
I'm not sure that there's restrictions on tools or materials, but I know that the National Park System has guidelines on preserving the original fabric of an artifact and also how you're going to interpret the things in your collection. So, for instance, we have trains that we've restored that we operate on a regular basis to give people rides. We want to present them as authentically as we can, but if there's updates in technology, especially when it comes to safety, we're gonna use those updated safety standards. For example, if we're trying to present, say, an artifact like a tool or a hand car or a document, we're going to try to preserve those things as they were just to show them off. If they're going to be used in any capacity, we're certainly going to update them as best we can to make them safe to use.
Do you work with any other museums? Like, have you ever contacted Steamtown or other nonprofits, maybe to display your equipment? How does that coordination effort work?
Sure. We actually have a pretty good working relationship with a lot of museums and historical societies in our area. Um, in fact, right next door to us is the New York Museum of Transportation. In fact, the track that we built together connects our two museums. Now, we don't do any train rides together anymore, but occasionally they have a couple of pieces of equipment that are relevant to our mission. Just last summer, they had an old wooden caboose that we borrowed and used for one of our events for a few weeks. And that was just as simple as us sending a locomotive up there to go couple on and bring it down to our end. We've also helped the Transportation Museum do repairs on their fleet of trolleys. Um, you know, we have a restoration shop that's fully equipped. We have an inspection pit where you can safely get under the trains, and we've worked with them um, to bring their uh, trolleys to our shop so they can be repaired and worked on. And it's important to have these partnerships because no organization exists in a vacuum, and we can learn from each other, not only from experience, but also we may just have resources that another group doesn't have, or maybe another museum has a specialized tool that we can borrow. So those relationships are pretty important to our success.
You made me think, what's your oldest piece of equipment?
One of our oldest pieces of equipment is actually, we have Rochester Subway Car 60, which is the last surviving example from the old Rochester subway that ran in the city from 1926 to 1956. It's a trolley car, and it's one of 12 that was built in 1916. So it's more than 100 years old. And we are actively working on restoring that car for display and eventual operation. We have a few other pieces in our museum that are at the 100-year mark. We have a New York Central wooden caboose that was built in 1921. That turned 100 a couple years ago. We've restored that. We have a wooden caboose from the Buffalo, Rochester, and Pittsburgh Railway that was built in 1923. It's celebrating its 100th anniversary this year. So we have a few pieces that are 100 years old. A lot of our diesel locomotives in our collection. The oldest diesel locomotive we have is a General Electric 45-ton switcher that was built in 1941 and used to work at Rochester Gas and Electric, pushing coal cars around the power plant at High Falls at BP Station. So, we have a fair number of pieces that hit the century mark and are an important part of Rochester's rich railroading legacy.
And if you wanted to drive the engine, say, if you wanted to be the engineer, I don't even know if that's the correct term.
Yeah,
the person
sure.
who actually steers and drives, well, nobody steers it. The track does that.
Nobody steers.
Do you have to get a special license to do that, or can anybody volunteer to do that?
Yeah, and we accept anyone to volunteer for those positions, but you do have to go through a rigorous training program, not unlike a real railroad, to learn how to operate safely. We do an annual rules certification class. There's a set of operating rules and safety rules that you have to learn and follow. That's followed by months of hands-on training. If you want to learn how to be a conductor and you're working with the engineer on how to operate the train safely, we'll teach you those skills. And, once you've been tested in those skills, you are a volunteer engineer conductor, and we give you a certification, just like you would have on a real railroad.
Do you give them a little cap too?
The cap is extra. The cap is extra.
So what's the greatest challenge in running this museum, and something that the public wouldn't necessarily know about, but that drives you crazy?
There's a lot of challenges to being an operating railroad museum. There's many museums where you just walk in and there's exhibits that you just look at. They're static, they don't move, and they're probably still interesting, but there's no interactivity. The fact that we actually operate the trains for the public, there's so many people working behind the scenes, maintaining the trains, maintaining the track, people working in marketing to let people know that we're doing events, the people on the ground working in the gift shop and the ticket office. It's not just, it doesn't happen by accident. A lot of people are working really hard behind the scenes. But the fact that we have the train ride and all the things that we just talked about building the railroad, maintaining the trains, training the train crews in safe operation. It is like operating a railroad. It's all the same challenges. Our railroad is only 1 mile long, but it's still all the same challenges of, keeping things up to date and staying on top of repairs. Again, we're dealing with vintage trains. Things will break. We have to stay on top of it. And it's a lot of work. It's running a full-size railroad, but we enjoy it because so many people actually come to our museum and they take a ride on a train for the first time. And that's really gratifying to give people that experience.
It sounds great. It almost sounds like a full-scale model railroad. That's not a mile. It's real.
It is in a lot of ways. Yeah. It's like a big train set.
Well, when we come back from the break, we'll get into what you might expect to see if you visit the museum, and also about those rides. We'll be right back after this message.
Through the mists of time, nature and man have both created and buried treasures beyond the imagination. With the ages, these riches slowly dissolve into mere myths until they are forever forgotten. But there are those brave souls who tirelessly cling to the truth, ever seeking to discover the undiscovered, to reveal what has always been there, to uncover the hidden gems of a land thought forsaken but loved by millions. 50 Hidden Gems of Greater Western New York. Discover the secrets in your own backyard. Buy your copy now at 50hiddengems.com.
Welcome back to the State of Greater Western New York Report. I'm Chris Carosa. With me today is Otto Vondrak. He is the president of the Rochester and Genesee Valley Railroad Museum. He's telling us a little bit about the history of what's going on. We actually had a question from the audience, and this is one we didn't think about, but it makes perfect sense. You said you're located in Industry, which is in Rush. What's the easiest way to get there?
The museum is actually really easy to find, right off exit 11 from 390, and the museum's located on Route 251, right across the train tracks, right at Industry.
Oh, the train tracks. I forgot about that. Does anybody still use those? Are they still
So
operating?
that's the former Erie Railroad Rochester branch, and now it's operated as a freight line. It is the Livonia, Avon, and Lakeville Railroad, headquartered down in Lakeville, not far from the museum. Yeah.
Well, so tell us a little bit about what people might expect to see when they first visit the museum.
It's funny because people will, if you've never been to our museum, they come up and they see the train station, they see the train parked in our yard, and they look around, they say, well, that's it. And, this is where you start the ride. And we explain to people, like, this is just the start, and we have exhibits in the depot, outside on the lawn, inside the baggage car behind the depot there. And those exhibits are just while you're waiting to board your train. But, the real adventure starts when you get on the train, you hear the conductor call, all aboard. We take you on a nice 1.5-mile round trip through our museum grounds, and we bring you to the upper yard. And the upper yard is where we have more of our historic trains on display, and some of them you can tour through. And while you're up there, you can also visit our restoration shop. We have a portion of our restoration shop that is open, and you can see behind the scenes how we restore the vintage trains. So this photo you're looking at there, that's actually the train, the caboose backing down into the station. And what you see on the lawn, we actually had a tag sale once. We had some extra material that we didn't need for the railroad, and we let some people purchase some antiques from us, and that was kind of fun. But that's the interactive part, is actually taking the train ride, and we bring you up to the upper yard. You get to see more trains. We have a little scenic overlook. You can watch our train climbing the hill coming up to the upper yard. People have a lot of fun. Again, a lot of people are taking their very first train ride with us, and we always tell them that they got to ride an authentic freight train today. These aren't passenger cars. You got to ride a freight train today. And so we tell the kids, I say, when you go see your friends back in school, tell them that you rode a freight train, and, I'm sure they'll be jealous.
That's incredible. It's an hour, it's a mile long. How long does it normally take to traverse the mile, and how fast do you go?
So, we keep the train at a walking speed. We want people to be able to enjoy the ride. And, the train ride starts from our restored depot, and it's about a 10 or 15-minute ride up to the upper yard. You have about 20 or 30 minutes to look around. You can stay as long as you like, or, if you decided you've seen it all, seen all the exhibits, train ride brings you back. So, the average visit to our museum is anywhere from like an hour to an hour and a half. But we encourage people to stay as long as they like, ask as many questions as they have, and just enjoy a fun day out with trains with us.
Yeah, you made me think of a question to ask. People ask questions. What's the most typical or the most popular question that you get asked at the museum?
People do ask us how do we steer the train, and a lot of times they'll see the brake wheel that's at the end of the car, and for the handbrake for the parking brake, and they think that's a steering wheel. But we just carefully explain. It's like, no, that's actually the parking brake, and it's actually the wheels have flanges on the rails, and it's the rails that steer us where to go.
How about the oddest question that you ever got, the one that intrigued you the most?
We do get a lot of odd questions. We had one visitor come to the museum. So all of our train rides throughout the year are, most of them are diesel powered. And we had one fellow, he pointed at the diesel engine. He's like, well, that used to be a steam engine, right? And they just converted it to diesel. And I had to explain to him that it was built new as a diesel locomotive, and that most of the steam engines were retired or scrapped, but they were not converted from steam engines.
Yeah, I mean, where's the nearest steam engine that people can see if they wanted to go see one?
Well, there is a lot of folks heard of the Arcade and Attica Railroad out in Arcade, New York. They've been doing steam excursions since the 1960s. I believe that their steam engine is currently down for repairs, it's getting rebuilt. Otherwise, I think one of the closest steam rides might be at Steamtown in Scranton, which is about 4 hours from the greater Rochester area. Otherwise, you're traveling to places like Ohio, the Cuyahoga Scenic Railroad outside of Akron. They do a steam train certain times during the summer. There's actually not very many steam trains around, which is why one of the events that we're doing at the museum this summer, we actually are renting a steam locomotive to pull some of our trains in September. And that's a lot of fun because, again, steam technology has not been around since the 1950s. And it's kind of fun introducing a new generation to this way of pulling trains that used to be very common.
How do you get a steam engine from wherever it's coming from to your place?
We work with a man who restored a small steam switcher about 20 years ago, and this locomotive is small enough to fit on a flatbed trailer, and so he actually travels all around the region. He rents out his locomotive. He brings it to our museum. He backs up the trailer onto our track, rolls off the engine, and add a little coal, add a little water, and you have instant steam engine. And then after we're done with the rides, we usually do the rides for 2 weekends in September, and then we just roll the engine back on the flatbed, and he's off to the next location.
It reminds me, when I was a kid, before my fingers got too fat, I had an N scale, 1/160, very small trains.
Yeah.
And there was a railer that you put on the rails that just you back the train onto it so it got there. But who knew? Maybe it was based on something real. I'm wondering, when you talk about fuel, what kind of fuel do the diesel locomotives? I mean, is it diesel or is it something else? And how do you get it?
The diesel locomotives run on diesel fuel oil, which we purchase from a local fuel supplier. So they just bring their trucks right up, and fuel our engines. Usually we get one fill up a season for each locomotive. Diesel locomotives are pretty fuel efficient, and also we're not running every day. So, usually we get a fill up, we get 400, 600 gallons at a time, and that'll usually take care of us for the whole season. We actually have a few diesel locomotives in our fleet, so we also try to spread the operation around among them. So we're conserving fuel, and we're also conserving wear and tear on these vintage locomotives.
What do you consider your most famous piece of equipment that you have?
I think probably one of the most important pieces in our collection is the Rochester subway car. It's certainly one of a kind, and it has the closest ties to our community. A lot of people have stories about their grandparents riding the Rochester subway, or they've never heard of the Rochester subway and they want to learn about it. So I think that Rochester subway car is probably the most well-known piece we have. We also have a unique diesel locomotive that's nicknamed the Hammerhead. It's a Alco RS3 type diesel locomotive that was built in 1953, and it's called the Hammerhead because, unlike other locomotive of its type, it has a high short hood that gives it a unique profile. And Lehigh Valley 211 is the last surviving Hammerhead diesel, and we have that preserved at our museum as well.
And the Lehigh Valley Railroad actually crossed the Erie just maybe a half mile or so south of you.
Yeah, not just a mile away was the Erie Main Line, the Lehigh Valley Main Line going east and west, just a mile from our museum. So again, another close tie to our community. Plus, the Lehigh Valley had a branch coming into Rochester from Mendon, and also from Mendon south into Honey Lake Falls and Lima, and when it was first built, all the way to Hemlock Lake, actually. So a lot of Lehigh Valley heritage in our area.
Right. Before we go, let's talk about your schedule. That's really the most important thing, because this is something that you can act on as a listener. If you want to go see and watch the train or ride the train, Otto, tell us a little bit about what your schedule is for this year and what people have to do to get on board.
Sure. We're actually changing our schedule up a little bit. A lot of people asked us to be more open more often. So we used to be open once a month for special events, and now June, July, and August is going to be our busiest time. We're going to be open 4 Saturdays a month. But coming up right away, we just actually launched our season in Easter. We had our Easter Bunny train rides. That was a lot of fun. Coming up in May, we have Mother's Day train rides on May 13th. May 20th, we have our popular Rails and Ales, where we have a dozen local craft breweries in attendance, and your ticket includes complimentary tastings from the breweries. You ride the train between our 2 tasting areas. That tends to sell out quickly. We limit the tickets to 300 to keep the festival nice and friendly. And then coming up in June, we have our first of 3 Trains and Trolleys at Twilight. That's a special partnership with the New York Museum of Transportation. You ride a train to the trolley. The trolley takes you to an old-fashioned trolley park where you enjoy complimentary ice cream and a free outdoor jazz concert. So those are some of the rides coming up right away. Otherwise, June, July, and August, we have a whole slate of events. We have Father's Day train rides coming up in June. We have Princess and Superhero train rides coming up in July. In August, we have our classic car show and train rides. And September, that's our big event. We're going to have the steam train coming back for real steam train rides. And then in October, we have our very popular Pumpkin Patch train rides. And then in December, we do our Santa train rides to the North Pole. So again, full schedule of events. We're going to be really busy this summer. We'd love to see everyone come out and take a ride with us and, come and experience New York State's largest operating railroad museum.
And they should go to rochestertrainrides.com for more information. Can they get the tickets from there, that location?
Yeah. Yeah, you visit Rochester Train Rides, you'll see our full schedule, and there'll be links to buy tickets.
Well, Otto, thank you very much for being a part of today's show. Lots of real cool stuff. And we might want to talk to you later about what it's like to be a national magazine editor located in Western New York. Never would have suspected that. But I know there's a lot of interest in trains out there. There's a lot of opportunities to ride trains. This is a nice one. I like the fact that the museum is actually an old building, original, restored. It looks and smells like it did way back when. And it's just the general bucolic nature of where you are. Really kind of hometown, rural atmosphere. It's something that I would encourage everyone to go see. Thank you for being here, Otto. Thank the viewers who've been watching live for taking time to look at this show. If you want to be a member of the live studio audience, go to our website, state.greaterwesternnewyork.com, and sign up. You'll be able to receive an invitation every Thursday morning for that day's show. come and see it live. That's the only way that you can ask questions. If you can't watch it live, that's okay too. It's archived on the site. It's also rebroadcast on our Facebook page and YouTube channels. If you like the page or subscribe to our YouTube channel, you will be notified when it's rebroadcast. So that's it for today. Thank you all for being here, and we'll see you all next week.